excited to dive in today. But before we want to begin, I want to introduce the commissioners on our panel today, all of whom are so excellent in their own ways. I know them personally. They have not only broken bamboo ceilings and opened doors for our community, but also I've seen them put in the work to fight for a community and represent us in their appointed spaces where they serve us. So I want to pass it over to our commissioners to say hello and share a bit about themselves before going into a deep dive. So first, I want to welcome in Vice Chair Macapugay. How are you?
I'm good, Cameron. Thank you so much for having me. And hello, everyone who is joining us this evening. So honored to be with you all. My name is Kirin Macapugay. Currently, I am Vice Chair of the California Commission on Asian Pacific Islander American Affairs. I am the chair of our Higher Education Committee. And previously, I was the chair of the Chula Vista Arts and Culture Commission, and also served on San Diego's Culture and Arts Commission as well. Very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And next, I want to welcome in our commissioner from Daly City. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, good. Can folks hear me well? Is that okay?
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Thank you for having me. My name is Fernando Montanes. I am a Recreation Commissioner here in the city of Daly City. I just want to plug in, we have the largest Filipino population here in the nation. So happy to be here. I'm also the youngest commissioner and first Gen Z commissioner for my city. So happy to be here.
Well, thanks for being here. And next up, we have on the other side of the bay from the city of Hayward. Welcome, Commissioner.
Hey y'all, my name is Daisy. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm the Community Services Commissioner for the city of Hayward, and so appreciative to be in this space and to share wisdom with y'all.
Thanks so much. And last but not least, we have our commissioner from Contra, Costa County, Commissioner Tiglao. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you, L.E.A.D, and thank you, Cameron, for organizing this. This is so fantastic. My name is Victor Benedict Tiglao. I have served in 3 different commissions before. I've served in the Blue Ribbon Committee in Concord, where we set out a vision for an institution of higher education in the city of Concord. I've served in the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee as well in the city of Concord, and now I serve in the Economic Opportunity Council of Contra Costa County. I'm so excited for the conversation we're about to have, and I'm so honored to be with you today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we'll dive right in. The first question is really about our personal journeys and motivations. So to start, could each of you share a bit about your personal journey as Filipino Americans? Specifically, what inspired you to pursue public service? And was there a certain moment where you sort of realized that this could be an avenue to affect change for others?
Yeah, I could go first. And to start in my own journey, just growing up, like I remember in high school, like I didn't learn anything about Filipino history, period, or in general. And it wasn't until like I went into college and I went into like Filipino FilAm groups, like student groups, that I've learned about like different history and revolutionary leaders like Larry Itliong and Gabriela Silang. And like ever since that moment, I switched my majors from pre-nursing to political science, which is completely different. And I was really inspired to be a part of public service. And it stemmed from my genuine love for my family, my community, and realizing that like policies have a huge direct effect into communities that affect us. And it wasn't until I actually attended Lead Filipino's awareness and action program. So plug in that too. Like I've learned more about how policies affect PhilAms and the way that like it just directly has a huge impact. And I really saw a need to be a part of that and use my skills that I've learned to enact that in my own neighborhoods.
So I'll follow up after Daisy's response. You know, it's interesting, I think, in terms of leadership, I keep getting asked to serve on these things. I keep trying to chill out a little bit, and the community comes knocking on my door and texting me saying, "Corinne, this is coming up. Can you serve?" And I don't take that lightly. I realize that it really is an honor for your community to come to you and say, "Hey, there's a situation that's happening. Could you help facilitate something? Could you show up? Could you help us mobilize people?" Forgive me, noisy neighborhood today. So really, when it comes to becoming involved and leading in civic affairs, honestly, my community came out and they kept asking me, and they asked me to join boards. They asked me to serve on commissions. They know my background. I've worked in some of San Diego's most under-resourced communities all my life. I've always worked in nonprofits or public education. And so everything I do is to make sure that we're uplifting not only our FilAm Filipino community, but our other under-resourced communities as well. And I like to think my work speaks for itself, and I'm honored that people recognize that and want me to still contribute in whatever meaningful way.
Thank you, Professor. I wasn't born in the United States. I was born in the Philippines, and we moved to the United States when I was 13 years old. And I remember one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen, and that those were shower heads, and the fact that hot water was coming out of them. And to me, that was such a luxury. And the fact that it was so ubiquitous and so it was everywhere. Because back in the Philippines, we didn't have that. It was just a moment in my life that I knew that change was afoot for me. And from then on, I was able to get resources that I needed. I didn't speak English that well, so I was given an ESL teacher. And when we needed healthcare, there was Medi-Cal. My family, at the beginning of our lives in the United States, we were given food stamps and we were given government services to get us on our feet. And that really started my journey in public service because I wanted to give back to the country that has given so much to me. And I always like to say that my patriotism stems from gratitude because so much of my life here has been because the government, my community has stepped up to help me. And now that I have what I have now, I'm able to give back. So I always like to say as well that if you're looking for a patriot, go talk to an immigrant. So my journey in public service starts from gratitude, and I'm super grateful for all of the resources and all the people who are like you, who have given people like me the opportunities that I have now.
Wow. Can I just say, I see myself in all your stories. Because I'm also an immigrant who was born in the Philippines, came here when I was 6, um, and I was Americanized. I was my family kind of ingrained in my system to kind of switch languages literally from Tagalog to English. But it wasn't until high school and like higher education where I started to relearn my identity and culture when I entered my first ever Filipino club in high school. And that's where I relearned my culture and my history. And, when they say that history will politicize you, it absolutely did me. I learned about Larry Itliong. I learned about the People Power movement in the 60s and 70s. And this whole Watergate just opened, and all of these new mentors and people just came about and embraced who I am and welcomed me in this community. And through that lens, Daly City has a lockdown. We have a rich history of Filipinos in public service. We have um, we have Filipinos up and down the roster from council to commissioners, and it's great to have this platform, and I'm privileged to be in this position. But it's also time for the youth to be involved and to really share the table with young people because that's when we can really provide equitability in power and move forward to that.
Thank you so much, everybody. Before we move on, I want to remind folks who are joining us online to please put your questions for our panelists in the chat. We'll be having a Q&A right after our questions for today. I'm just so blown away by all of your stories, and I think that a lot of our audience can really appreciate you sharing that and being open with it. I want to start, at the sort of ground level. in terms of not a lot of people are familiar with what commissioners do. And so I would love to just start there. And if you could share some of the objectives of your commission that you serve on, and also what compelled you to seek an appointment to the commissions where you've served on in the past.
All right, I believe I'm kicking us off for that one. So the CAPIA, California Commission on API Affairs, oh my goodness, ever since 2020, we've really taken off with quite a few initiatives. So our three priority areas are equitable access to economic opportunities, education, particularly higher education, as well as health and well-being. That said, we also were instrumental working along the API Legislative Caucus to start the Stop the Hate funding, which benefits hundreds of organizations across the state. So we are a consultant on the Stop the Hate funding. We also are consultants on the API and other ethnic media coalition network. We also, in particular, the higher education priority, which I'm chairing currently along with my former chair, so Dr. Cirin Villavicencio out of Delta at Stockton. With our partners like APAHI, Amen, Colegas, we were able to start the state's first student achievement program to benefit lower income AA NHPI students. It's the first time there's been one in the nation, and California spearheaded that. So as of now, we have benefited 51 community colleges throughout the state and 19 California state universities. So we have much work ahead of us still, but we're going strong. We actually have, if I may plug real quick, September 18th, we do have a policy summit over at Sac State, one of our partners. And so we hope that we'll all see you there, because really, as much of the work we do, it all depends on you all in the crowd and in the Zoom and in this room to really make sure that we hear all that you are experiencing and that we work alongside all of you to uplift what those issues are in our communities across the state.
Thanks so much. And Mr. Mack, you are the only state commissioner here, so it's so great to hear your experience and how unique that is. And I want to pass it off to Commissioner Montanes.
Thank you. Wow, first of all, that's really exciting to hear. Thank you for all the work that you do, especially as a youth and student. That means a lot. So for the Recreation Commission, we're a citizen advisory board. We tend to hear reports from our director and staff about recreation events, operations, any updates, especially on like the fiscal end, because like a lot of other cities, our Parks and Recreation department tends to be the first at the chopping block when it comes to like budget cuts or whatnot. So we try our best as commissioners to really advocate for better funding for the Parks and Rec department, because we serve a lot, young and old. We provide services like summer camps, after school programs for youth and students. We provide food and groceries for our elders and active adults. And we do a lot, and I'm proud to say that the rec department is very active all year round. And we also hold a lot of cultural events for our Chinese American, Hispanic American, and of course Filipino American communities. So we have a full calendar ahead. And one of the reasons why I chose to apply for the rec commission is because they serve the youth, and it just makes sense to have a youth at the table to be their advocates, because I'm very close to some of my old classmates, some of the students that I'm still mentoring today. And to be a bridge for that gap is very important to have.
Thank you, Commissioner and Professor. These are such amazing work that you do. I serve on the Economic Opportunity Council of Contra Costa County. So we're a county-wide organization commission. We find our start at the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964 by President Lyndon B. Johnson. So he created these local entities, these local agencies that would have one goal, and that's to alleviate poverty. So we get funding from the federal government, from the state government, and together as a body, we set policy as to how best alleviate poverty. So we fund a lot of different services. We fund organizations that serve and cater to that goal. So one of the organizations that we help fund is Monument Impact, which is an immigrant and refugee-based organizations that help people who just got here, people who are looking for a job, people who are looking for economic opportunity. So we fund them. I'm very proud of the work that we do because it really does have, especially for immigrant communities, have a very tangible result. So the Economic Opportunity Council is one of the most important federal programs that we have now because they have such a local focus, and I'm very proud to serve in them. And actually, the reason why I wanted to serve in my commission is because I was one of the recipients of the backpacks that they were giving to low-income children before. So I'm happy now to give back to this commission, to this council that has given so much to me.
I love hearing all about this. Like, I think the common thread I'm noticing so far is that like we've gained a lot like on the cities or the areas that raised us, and it's kind of like us doing our part to like also give back to hopefully have that happen to someone else too. And I think that's like similar to with why I've joined the Community Services Commission. I mean, I have a big background working with like CBOs. I'm a part of a CBO in general, and I fully understand the process of what it's like. And some of the objectives for the Community Services Commission, at least for Hayward, we have a budget of close to $2 million that we need to allocate for the city. We interview and vet different public agencies or different agencies in general serving the Hayward residents and responding and prioritizing the immediate needs for the folks too. And also like recognizing like, like housing is a huge crucial issue within Hayward, like, and especially it being affordable, like from our point in time count data, like there was a 30% increase in homelessness, at least for the city of Hayward. And that's like number one across Alameda County. So the Community Services Commission, we've prioritized that. And housing was actually one of the number one agencies and direct services that we decided to fund more. Second being food security, and third being providing funding for youth services and just investing more in the youth. But like responding to different communities and like also listening and attending these events that we fund, like talking with folks, like you get a better understanding of not only how the budget works in the city, which like a lot of people need to pay attention to regarding like city matters because money talks, and being a part of at the table where you vote on priorities that you see, that I see personally day to day, like just going through my own neighborhoods and all that stuff. Like it's such a crucial moment to really amplify those voices and opportunities.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And yes, exactly, Daisy. I think the one thing getting out of this right now is you all have such incredible lived experiences, and those lived experiences and perspectives really brings value to your roles as commissioners, which not only deeply influences how you approach and shape policy, but it also helps fill gaps in community representation and reflects the diversity within our communities. And one of the quotes I love from Dr. Cornel West is, "You can't lead the people if you don't love the people, and you can't save the people if you don't serve the people." And also, the people who are closest, or people who most often have solutions to problems, are the people who are directly impacted by those issues. And so that's what you all bring to this panel and to all of your commissions. But I want to ask this question, which is, how can commissions act as platforms to amplify the voices of the FilAm community and other underrepresented communities? Can you share an example of how your background and experiences have helped highlight issues or drive changes within the community?
I'm going to kick us off with this one. And I'm going to answer this in two different ways. The first one is, it tends to be that whenever I'm in these commissions, in the three commissions that I've served, I tend to be the first or the only Filipino American on the board. Luckily, in my Economic Opportunity Council, I have another Filipino American on the board, which I'm very proud about. And I'm able to highlight things that are very unique to our community. I mean, so much of us work in healthcare, right? And being able to highlight the mental health and the actual toll that it takes on mental health and on these workers, um, I'm able to push that through. But I think more importantly, and this is the other way I'm going to answer this, is that within the Filipino American community, it's important that representation matters. And there are cultural things that we're taught at home that I believe can be, I would say, detrimental to being in the public life, being kind of ambitious. There's values around humility, which is great. I think being more obedient and being kind of reserved and quiet, these are values that we cherish at home. And I think those are great qualities at home. But I think that seeing other Filipinos in positions where they're actually ambitious, sitting in their power, and they're able to project their voices in a way that may feel uncomfortable for us because maybe we're not so used to being so having big voices or speaking out, especially to people who are older than us, elders and people in authority. So what I hope to be in this commission, and when other Filipino Americans see me, is that they can do what I do, and that they found empowerment in seeing somebody really sit in their power and be able to project that. Um, and I hope that they are inspired to join. Thank you.
Wow. I got goosebumps. Um, when I'm reflecting on this question, I always just want to like emphasize that Daly City has a lockdown. We have a rich history of civic engagement. We currently have a Pinay mayor, Jocelyn Manalo. We have a Filipino vice mayor who used to be my professor of ethnic studies when I went to my community college, Dr. Rod Taus Magbuwal. So we're everywhere, and we have at least one um, member, or we have at least one commissioner up and down the roster. And aside from amplifying our own voices as philams, I find it an obligation to myself to, while I'm watering my community, might as well water the whole garden and raise and uplift others that are in need of that presence in civic engagement. One thing that I look back to most recently is how we were able to um, be in solidarity with my Arab and Muslim residents in a time where they needed the voices on their side and pass a bilateral ceasefire resolution here in City Hall. And that was such a momentous occasion because I was able to use my privilege as a commissioner, my connections with my fellow Filipino commissioners, and bring my residents, myself, and our council members on the table and discuss what's happening in Gaza right now is affecting residents here. They have families in Gaza. This is a direct impact to our local community, and we need to make that heard. We need to make something happen to at least express some type of hope and solidarity that what's happening in Gaza right now needs to stop, and we have to start locally so that we can provide impact nationally. Um, so that's just one of the things that I was able to do in such a short time. Um, Again, I'm new to this whole thing as a commissioner. I was just sworn in March, and we went right at work, making all of that happen. And it took a village. It absolutely took a village. So I'm very proud to be part of that.
Yes, I appreciate you bringing that up so much too. Like, it brings a sentiment of like how we're not free unless we're all free. And honestly, like moments like that of recognizing like what does it mean to be a champion of the working class, but what also does it mean to be a champion for cross-racial solidarity too. And I think that's like an opportunity that you get to like when you're sitting on these boards and commissions, like I wouldn't say like it's representation, but it's also like the integrity and the work that you put behind that title. Because if you're not putting in that work, your title means nothing. Like it's really the integrity that you hold and that you champion to center like the self-determination for all communities that like really resonate with folks. And I know with like for the city of Hayward, the Community Services Commission. So there was a city in the 1960s for Hayward. It's called Russell City, and it was an area in which it turned into an industrial redevelopment plan, and that caused a lot of Black and Brown communities to be displaced. And because of the work of the CSC and different advocates for it, in November of 2021, like Hayward City Council actually voted unanimously to put out a formal apology for the city's role in demonstrating racial discrimination and start a Russell City reparative justice project in which the descendants of those that were affected during that time at Russell City, now they have their own steering committee where they are able to determine what's the most appropriate restitution that the city can move forward with as well. So those are examples of not only do we handle budget, but like having that opportunity to be that close to city council. Like when people say that things aren't a local issue and the way that impacts internationally, like that's, y'all should really like, this is an opportunity to empower that and challenge that thought, because what happens locally can definitely make a regional impact as well. And I'm glad that the next person that will speak will talk about statewide, because the local to statewide also has a huge impact.
What can I say that my brilliant colleagues have already said? I also was born in the Philippines. I was born in Kalinga, and I am Kalinga and Bontok by blood, which means I'm comprised of two of the Philippines indigenous peoples. We make up less than 9% of the country. And so being an indigenous woman, but living away from those lands, it's a complicated layers of identities that I sift through. But one of the things that my family, my elders, my father, mother, everyone before them taught me was you have to be able to work with people. And so even though my title now is professor, I'm always a community organizer at heart. That's how I started. And much of my teaching and the way I educate is based on how do we work together. And like I mentioned earlier, it has to be not only centering our Filipino XAO communities, but our other communities as well, our siblings, because the issues that affect us affect other people. Immigration, justice, criminal justice, smart justice, um, healthcare, equity, education, everything, anything that impacts us also impacts our other communities. So as a commission, even though we do obviously uplift voices of our AA and HPI communities, we always do so with the lens of how can our other communities also benefit? How can we make sure this is not a zero-sum game? Because the last thing we want is for us to in any way limit resources or form barriers for any other communities. If we do that, like Daisy said, then none of us are free, right? So as an example, with the commission, the Stop the Hate funding, that's not only for APIA organizations. We have here in San Diego, the organizations that are funded here through our Stop the Hate money, even though it was spearheaded by the COVID-related hate that many of us Asian Americans experienced. That funding now benefits many of our LGBTQIA community organizations, our Muslim and Arab organizations, our Black organizations, our Latinx AO organizations, our Chicano AX organizations as well, because again, it can't be a zero-sum game. I also wanted to mention, I saw someone ask a question about how the public can be engaged. For all of these commissions that you have here, they're all open. You have to have public hearings. If there's at least 3, or depending on whatever minimum you have, these are all public and accessible to all of you. Granted, they're not always accessible if they're only in person, right? So our commission in particular, we also live stream like L.E.A.D is doing right now. We also have Zoom options, and we do make sure that there's time for a public statement, because again, we are all public bodies, and we need to make sure that we are lifting up what the issues may be.
Thank you so much for sharing. And the reason why we chose to host this workshop as an organization, course, it's about the information, it's about the education, about what this is, but it's also about how we translate that into action. So for those in our audience who are change makers, agents of change, and might be considering a similar path to you all, can you share some advice on how to navigate the process of being appointed? What is that process like for you to fill out the application and then go through interviews and then eventually being appointed?
Cool. I think I'll start this off. Little backstory. I actually applied to be in rec, I think a total of 3 times. 3 times in a span of, I want to say, 2 years. Um, I keep telling myself, you know what? Just keep applying. Just keep applying. You'll just climb the pile of the applications, and eventually your application is gonna be on someone's desk, and you know you'll go from there. So it took a few tries, but before I even got into rec, I actually got appointed in the bicycle pedestrian advisory committee. That was like my first ever role in public service, and it was great because we do need advocates for pedestrian safety, for equitable infrastructure for everyone to make our city safe. But I really wanted to be in rec as someone who works alongside many young folks, youth and students. I work alongside various nonprofits serving youth and students. So it just made sense on paper and for myself to be in rec. And so, all I have to say is to those that want to take up this realm of service is attend the meetings, get your name out there. You really have to be one of the loudest voices for yourself. Um, and also just be present in these events in your community. And the one simple thing you can do is mark your city website as your favorite so that you can check it every time and look at events that are happening near you and attend those events, integrate with your residents. And sooner or later, you're going to transition from just a simple resident to a commissioner, and you've already have that background of knowing what residents are concerned about, where things should go from there. So yeah, just it's funny to say fake it till you make it, but that's kind of what I did. um, well, not fake it in a way of I had genuine intention of really serving because I had a lot of mentors that pushed me to be a public servant, so I owe it to them too. So yeah.
So a couple of things. You do have to know what city, county, state, even national boards and commissions are there. Okay. Find out what even exists and what sounds exciting to you. As you see here in the room, we have different things. You could be arts and culture, you could be in rec, you could be community services. We even have water. We have water boards. We have so many different boards and commissions that you got to make sure that you're interested and would want to serve it. After that, you need to find out who does the appointing. Is it your mayor? Is it your city council member? Is it your county supervisor? Is it your assembly member, your senator? Is it your governor? And you're thinking, how the heck am I supposed to know those people? Here's the thing, you do have to get out there. And I saw that there was a question too about how can we intentionally show up for our Black siblings? How can we engage our Latinx siblings and all of our other siblings in our communities, right? At the end of the day, we cannot be transactional. We have to be intentional about forming relationships. Do you have sincere relationships with people in your communities? Does it show that you actually give a shit about what's not just happening in your house, but in other people's houses too, right? When I think about, because I'm a community college professor, anytime I think about students and what they're going through, I don't just see them. I see their families. I see the entire communities that they come from. And we have to be real about listening to what our other communities are going through. And if we do have that privilege, like my colleagues mentioned, if we do have that privilege to lift up not only our situation, but to say, look, this community is also experiencing this, right? When we, as Fierce and Lead Filipino, uplifted the issues around Angelo Quinto and the fact that he had died from the same knee to neck hold that George Floyd did, we partnered with Assembly Member Mike Gibson out of Compton, a Black Assembly member. And he was our biggest champion in helping us spearhead this, because this wasn't limited to the Black community. This also affects our community and other communities, Black community more so. But we needed to make sure that we're working together to lift up these issues so that nobody else ever has to struggle or lose people like we continue to lose every freaking day. We have to do that together. And so I will say, to my folks out there who are more so activists, it may be a little difficult sometimes to serve. I'll be honest, when you serve on these public bodies, because you are going to be serving with people who are not from the same social political viewpoints that you have. But the opportunities that we have with our boards and commissions to come together is that you still get to be that voice. Even if you're the only voice there at the table, at least you're there and you can't be ignored. So find out, again, what's out there, what your true passions are, and how you can make sure that you get to know other people who are in those positions who can place you on those boards and commissions.
Yes, I was definitely clapping and snapping. I don't know if that was seen, but I totally agree with what everyone had mentioned before, like of everything that was mentioned. And for folks in the audience, if you're interested in, stepping up and like being a part of these roles too, like I know for the hardest part of it for me, because I know I was able to do the research and like look online and ask folks for help about it, but like it was really like the tipping point of like, do I have should I do it? Do I have what it takes to do it? Like, is this something for me or anything like that? Like that point where you're at your tipping point and you want to take that leap of faith with the intention of kind of like what has been mentioned before of your intentions. Like, are you doing, like, you're doing this for the community members as well, and like tapping really into your ancestors, like the long lineage of folks that got you to where you are today. Like, how can I replicate this and make it better for the next generation to come to and step into that role? But also, like, just from the folks on this panel too, like, I'm sure y'all can reach out to us outside of this as well. Like, if you have any questions regarding what commissions or boards that you're interested into, like, I'm more than happy to also have like one-on-ones and have those more intimate conversations with y'all to talk more about it.
Thank you, Daisy, and I echo that as well. Please feel free to use me as a resource if you want to apply for commissions, for boards that you're interested in. The very first commission I've ever applied to was the Blue Ribbon Committee, actually. And this committee was charged with envisioning an institution of higher education in Concord. And that came about because there was an exploratory meetings that were happening at the Concord City Council about the Concord Naval Weapons Station. Now, the Concord Naval Weapons Station, its redevelopment is the biggest housing project in the Bay Area. And one of the parts that they're trying to navigate is how to build a higher education institution in that Naval Weapons Station. And so I showed up. I showed up to these exploratory meetings, and it tended to be that I was the only member of the public to show up to these meetings. And so when the body was formed, the Blue Ribbon Committee was formed, I was tapped into being the student voice in this committee. So the point I'm trying to make, and the point that everybody has made here, is that you just cannot fall out of a coconut tree. You have to show up. You have to have those relationships with people, your elected officials, the people who appoint these positions, and it needs to come out of genuine intention. It needs to come out of genuine curiosity to serve. So I would encourage you to build those relationships with your elected officials, to show up to those meetings and make sure that you've attended at least one of those meetings that you're trying, in the commission you're trying to attend and you're trying to get appointed to. And there's so many different committees that your skill set can apply to. You just got to find them. So make sure you keep track of the terms ending in those websites in your county and in your cities, because I bet you will find one that you will love.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. That concludes the questions from Lead Filipino, but I want to throw it off to your community for their questions. So the first question that we have from the audience is, can you discuss the importance of just attending and participating from the public side? How is public attendance in each of your boards and commissions? And this is open to anybody who wants to answer as well.
I think each of us mentioned that a little bit. These are all, so it depends on the resources of the staff too. So my commission, we did not have staff at all until 2020, just so y'all know. So even though you see, if you're following, you may see some recent activity now on the commission and in our hearings and all that, but prior we did not have staff at all. Also, just so you all know, I'm pretty sure we're all volunteer. So most of these positions are volunteer positions. We do not get paid to serve. And I probably do a good chunk. We have monthly meetings, multiple monthly meetings. We do this because we know it's important. But that said, it's not easy filling these slots sometimes. And you hear that people have applied multiple times, but at the same time, we don't get compensated for this. So anyway, going back to the question of public access, it all depends. I think each board and commission, their staff capacity differs. So some of them are able to stream, many of them are in person. Your city hall, your county building. Us, we don't meet at the state capitol, but we meet very close to the state capitol. They're all public notice, meaning that they have to be, the meeting notices are put out 72 hours prior so that the public can attend if they have capacity. And what I do appreciate from the pandemic is that we do have now more online accessibility that did not exist before. If you weren't there in person, then you're just not there. But now we do have more options to call in and Zoom into for public testimony.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to add to this. Public attendance in our meetings at the Economic Opportunity Council tend to be very little and very small. So it adds to your advantage if you are one of the few people to attend, if you want to get appointed. For our commission specifically, we actually have alternates as well. So it actually enlarges the number of people who can get appointed into the Economic Opportunity Council. So look out for those kinds of positions as well, because there may not be a main position that's open, but there are alternates as well, which tend to, life happens. There's a lot of members that can attend meetings, and you're able to fill in and participate fully in that committee.
Thank you both for that. And Vice Chair Macapugay, I think the first part of what you had mentioned really does point to an equity issue, right? We think about the people who are often in these seats in commissions and boards. You mentioned a lot of them are not compensated. So there are a lot of people in communities who are just trying to get food at the table, just trying to get by. Some are working 2 or 3 jobs, and they don't have time to maybe leave their kids with somebody and be a commissioner for 5 hours, however long your meetings are. And you have to take that into consideration. And that's the same for any government body, making sure that we are fully represented. So, and Vice Chair Macapugay, you might have mentioned or touched on this second question, but somebody asked or said, real talk, Black brothers and sisters have been shouldering the burden far too long. Time for more of us to help in the fight for collective liberation. And we don't do enough to advocate for our Black brothers and sisters, in my opinion. And how can we start getting our Latinx folks start mentioning Manong Larry's name? Once we solidify, we got to build across all marginalized groups. Our struggles are very common and one and the same. So I want to ask if anybody has anything to add on to that question.
If I can add something to that. I said something along the lines of, like, if you're going to water yourself, water the whole garden. And that's really the whole essence of what I've previously shared about the how we managed to pass a ceasefire resolution recently in Daly City, and that's through collective work, through solidarity work. It was FilAm, Asian, Latinx, Hispanic, Arab, Muslim coalitions advocating together for something like that to happen. And, as much as we want to embrace and celebrate that victory, that's also an opportunity to continue that conversation of how we can consistently support civic engagement, proper and equitable representation for all our marginalized communities. Um, because it is pretty well known here locally that our Arab and Muslim neighbors are very underserved, underrepresented, um, and I'm able to be in this position because of the hard work of those before me that saw how Filipinos and Filipino Americans were also underrepresented. It was not easy work, and learning that history just provides a better understanding of how we need to do the same, if not more, organizing to uplift our neighbors. And so, I'm still learning all of these political maneuverings and how we can really, um, share the platform with all of our underrepresented communities. But it starts with conversations. It starts with meeting them where they're at and understanding that we have to listen to what their immediate needs are. And when we keep on talking, we understand that a lot of their needs are also my community's needs, and we come to this conclusion that, well, if we're um, expressing the same concern over a revolving issue, let's go to a city council meeting together. Let's show up as a collective coalition of solidarity. um, and so I really take that question and everyone's answers to heart, that we're privileged to have a community that has built the platform for us to represent our community. Let's make it bigger. Let's continue building for others. So yeah.
Sure. Anybody else on that question before we move on?
Yeah, just real quick, like I think that there's an important piece about that too, about just the power of what collective action and mass mobilization can really bring for folks. And like, even this panel and like this workshop itself is an opportunity for us to share the knowledge and spread it amongst our communities, but also like essentially like recognizing that a lot of leadership had came from Black leadership. Like this, they have paved the way for a lot of roadmaps that we follow as well. And like in our collective need for liberation, and like there's a sense of protection for that piece too, from like other narratives out there that are harming our communities. And it's important to start amplifying our actual neighbors that like live in these cities and not from like literally anywhere else, like that do not live here at all, but recognizing too the power that we have. And it really takes a moment of courage and bravery, and like what had been mentioned before about the importance of conversation and having those courageous conversations as well. But yeah, just that piece about collective action is very important.
Thank you so much for that, and big thank you for the audience member who posed that question to all of us. The last question we have from the audience is, why is there a limit to how many are hired? Is there a route for people that are never hired and want to apply their skill set to the community?
So on the board, so most boards and commissions, they each have a different, depending on the bylaws that they were created under, they all have a different number of seats, and they all differ. So It really depends. Again, that goes back to when we mentioned earlier to really take the time to research the boards and commissions that you're really interested in, and to even see if they have vacancies. Typically, if your city, county, state has updated lists, or usually there's an appointing person. There's someone who handles appointments to boards and commissions at different levels, and you can contact that person or their office and ask, "Hey, I'm interested in like the Parks and Recs commission. When would the next opening be?" And even if they don't have a vacancy, you could still submit an application. And typically that is online. If there's a commission that has a lot of seats that are opening up, they'll typically send out word like, "Hey, folks, we're going to have like 5 seats opening up. Please apply." So it all differs. Again, I want to mention that most of these boards and commissions, they are not. It's not a hire per se because we're all volunteers. But a lot of that also does depend on your background. So say that it's a mental health commission, right? They're going to favor people who might have some background as clinicians or advocates, people who work in healthcare. That said, though, I think that it is important to have people who also have other experiences. Depending on who you are and where you're from, we're all going to come in with a different perspective. So it just really depends on your background and what it is that they're looking for at the moment. And they also always look at the diversity of who's there. Like, even though in my commission we're all API, you all know that Asian Pacific Islanders are not a monolith, right? So who do we have regionally across the state? Who do we have that's Pacific Islander, that's Polynesian, Melanesian, Micronesian? Who do you have that's East Asian, South Asian, East Asian, right? So all that and all those degrees of diversity, most of the boards and commissions should be looking at what the composition is appearing to be. That said, if you are on a cross-racial, multi-racial commission, make sure, tell them like, "Hey, I don't see any of my Black or African American folks on this commission, and there should be at least two. Who can we get on?" Tap your own networks. We don't see enough Latinx Day old folks here. Who do you know that should be serving there along with you? So that's another way to make sure that we're getting representation from all the communities that need to be heard too. Any of my colleagues want to add to that?
I'm going to add to it just briefly. My as I mentioned earlier, my commission has alternate seats, so we can be much bigger than we're originally intended, and you go through the same process that we go through. We are actually approved by the board of supervisors in my council, so look for those entry points, and you're going to get a lot of experience through that as well. So I would say look for those alternate positions if it's full, because some of them do have those.
Oh no, did we lose Cameron? I do see. I'll go ahead and jump in then, because I know we're running out of time. If any of my colleagues want to answer any advice that we that you wish you knew before you got into what you're into.
I'll jump in really quickly. An advice that I wish I had was I wish I understood all of the different acronyms. There's a learning curve to being in a commission and how to navigate. One of the services we provide and we fund is called LIHEAP and LIWAP. Now these are like very complicated like acronyms, but what they actually mean is that we have services that provide to help people pay their bills, their electric bills and their water bills. So I would say an advice I would give to people who are starting out and to myself is to look those up, is to make sure that on day one you're prepared and you understand what's going on. Because even though I've been to a few of the meetings, I still was very new to all the technical terms associated with what we're trying to govern. So I would say go look those up.
Okay, I know like Robert's rules too is super important in these meetings because you have to second a motion, you have to make an amendment, you have to move to make, et cetera, et cetera. Just a quick crash course on Robert's rules. Yes, like right, who's Robert? But like make a quick crash course on Robert's rules before you enter those meetings because it is definitely ran that way as well. So I would take that as an advice. That should be very helpful for folks to get into it too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And well, one follow-up question I have, and out of curiosity, how many folks do you have in your commission? Is it 5, 7, 9? Okay, I'm seeing 5,
I, bel-
8,
I think we have 12,
12. Wow, that's a big number.
10
I
or
think
12.
we actually might have about 18. So
Whoa,
lots of voices.
18?
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So our commission actually is mandated to have people from different backgrounds. So we need to have people from government, from the public sector, low income representation. So we do have a set number that we need to fill in.
Gotcha. And what happens if your commission has a vote where it's, I don't know, 9 and 9, and it's tied, this motion fails?
I believe so.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, that ends our questions from the audience, but I do want to throw it back to you all for any final remarks, reflections, encouragement for our audience.
Yeah, I could kick us off. Definitely like just being in this space of just sharing all this wisdom that I'm super excited about. Another one is to also realize like what is at stake for us when we don't step into our power. The true reality of it is that there will be bad actors out there. If you don't step into your power, someone else will. And you want to have that opportunity to really amplify your community. And if you're thinking about it, or like you're at that tipping point of should I do it, should I not, should I put myself out there, like you have folks like us to be there with you, to be of resource, and like definitely leaning on your support system, which is your community, like the ones that like you're trying to serve. They'll be there to guide you every step of the way too.
Cool. I'm gonna go next because I actually have a commission meeting after this. But first, I just want to say thank you, Lead Filipino. Thank you, Cameron, and thank you to my fellow panelists for this workshop. I feel embraced because I resonate with all of the answers and all of your backgrounds. And the one thing I just want to put out there is never wait for permission to lead. Never ask for permission to lead. Just when you feel compelled to rise to the occasion, strike while the iron is hot because time is too precious to wait around, and you know it's gonna take a lot of work. Right now, I'm still on training wheels as I enter this realm of public service, but we have to learn how to crawl, to walk, and to run, and so just take on that role and expect to learn a lot from yourself and from other people. So thank you.
Mr. Montanes, I know you have a commission meeting in actually right now, so if you have to leave, feel free to. But we'll go with Vice Chair Macapugay next.
So my big advice for all of you: just give it a shot. Don't feel like you have to know everything. You're there to learn, and people are there to learn from you. So don't be intimidated. Make sure that you're there. Lift up your voice and come in as your full self. All right, like right now, I'm wearing my motherland clothing, right, with the aunties weave back home. I represent that all the time. You can never separate who you are, and I know a lot of times we feel like we have to code switch or pick certain identities. Don't be yourself. You're there for a reason. You were chosen to be there for a reason. So make sure that you represent with all that you are.
I echo everything that's been said today. I want to thank Lead for this this webinar, for Cameron for your moderation. Thank you so much. I will say, if you're on the verge of wanting to apply, I'm going to tell you this. There are so many careers that begin on commissions. One of those is Vice President Kamala Harris. She served in an insurance unemployment board in the state, and now she's vice president. So I'm going to say this: vice presidents and presidents are made in commissions. So I think it's time for you to step up. It's time for you to sit in your power and finally put your hand out and lead with authority. So I'm going to say that to all Filipino Americans. Now is not the time to be coy. Now is not the time to be hesitant or reserved. Now is the time to lead with your voice, with a very, very big voice.
Well, I had no idea that President Harris started out in a commission, so thank you for sharing that piece of info. That's really interesting. But that concludes our panel, and I just want to thank you all for being so open and sharing your lived experiences and your experience on your commissions with us. And our audience really appreciates it. But this is not the last time we'll be talking about this. This is just the start. We want to make sure that we mentor folks to be in these positions, go through the process. And so I invite our audience to stay tuned and stay updated. We have a lot more coming to be Filipino. So thank you again, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.